Day 6 of the 2024 U.S. Championships saw the leaders Fabiano Caruana and Carissa win yet again in order to increase their lead in each section. Going into the open results, top seed Fabiano Caruana defeated Grigoriy Oparin, taking his score to 4 out of 6. Meanwhile, Shankland beat Robson, and Dominguez managed to grind down Abhimanyu Mishra. Caruana continues to lead with Niemann in second place with 3.5. In the U.S. Women's Championship, Carissa won yet again, defeating Tatev Abrahamyan to continue her perfect run with 6 out of 6 points. She now leads the group by 2 full points ahead of Irina Krush, Begim Tokhirjonova, and Alice Lee, who are all on 4 out of 6. Going into the games, we'll start with the game between Caruana and Oparin, which featured an Italian game with knight of 6, d3, and h6. Here Caruana goes a3. Oparin, of course, is a longtime second of Caruana, so definitely there was some intrigue in the opening here in terms of what line these players are going to choose. But eventually they landed on this kind of position, d6. White trades on c5, d takes c5, castles, queen to d6. Oparin spending time at this point. I think queen d6, not the only move. Bishop g4 also playable here. Black's position looks okay, but after queen d6, knight d5, Black does land under some pressure here. Takes on d5, e takes d5, knight e7, and now queen to e1. Very clever move, hitting the e-pawn and not falling into a pin after bishop to g4. So here Black plays f6 to defend the pawn, but now knight d2, bishop f5, knight e4, takes on e4, d takes e4, and the players reach this middle game with White having bishop versus knight, and it seems like White has at least a little bit of an edge here. After b6 takes queen to b4, queen d6, they actually go into the endgame, and White is definitely a bit better here. Fabi starts pressing for some time. But actually, for the most part, I would say Oparin was holding his own here and keeping the position quite reasonable. However, it was pretty unpleasant to hold this long term as White continues to make progress here. Eventually, Fabi trades rooks, and then he organizes this break with g4. Takes, knight f6, bishop e6. Now Black goes rook to b8. I think the engine was giving knight e8 here as a better move in order to kind of deal with White's potential break of c5. Because this is what ends up happening in the game. Rook to b8 is played, probably a mistake, allowing White to play c5. And now after dc, d6, White's d-pawn ends up being very, very strong. And White has this simple idea of pushing d7 and then playing rook takes b6. Because Black's rook is going to be connected to the d8 square. So here Oparin, I believe, starts to go even further wrong, goes rook h8. The engine was saying that maybe knight h7 here is holding, followed by just bringing the knight back to f6. And yeah, it's a very, very difficult position. The engine gives White already a big advantage here, but not clear if it's winning just yet. Maybe king f8 as well was a trying to head to e7. After rook h8, d7, Black goes back rook d8, but now rook takes b6, and it's all over. If knight takes d7, there's rook to b7 here, just winning the piece. And at this point, White is breaking through, and the rook and bishop and king as well are just too strong. So bishop to c4, nice move from Caruana, hitting everything on the 6th rank. King back to g7, bishop to b5. Again, the pawn is kind of untouchable. Now rook to c6. Black finally takes the pawn as the king is close enough to defend, but bishop to c4 check. King here, and now rook e6, and White is winning a lot of material in the position. Real quick, if king to g7 here, then there would be rook d6 with a very unfortunate pin on the d file this time, and then bishop to b5 coming, and White wins here as well. So king e7, check, king f7, rook takes e5, one pawn falls, now rook e6, bishop b5, the second pawn falls, knight e5, rook g5, and Oparin resigned here as yeah, he's losing another pawn, then White will be 2 pawns up, and of course, completely winning. So very nice technical win here from Caruana as he increases his score to 4 out of 6, and once again regains the clear lead in the U.S. Championship. Moving on to U.S. Women's Championship, critical game here between Tatev Abrahamyan against Carissa. Going into the round, Tatev was in second place, a point and a half behind Carissa, who of course so far has been on a perfect score. And this game was quite sharp. We saw an Italian game here as well. This one with bishop c5, c3, knight f6, d4 takes, and now b4. And this line, I believe, is called the Dubov Italian, attributed to Grandmaster Daniil Dubov. Very, very sharp line. White a lot of times sacrifices a pawn here. And yeah, this one gets chaotic very, very quickly. Bishop b6, e5, black goes d5. At this point, both players here are still playing quickly in their preparation. Typical counter-strike from black here to play d5 with the idea that if white takes en passant, then the knight on f6 is no longer under attack. Black can castle and has a very nice and active position. And if black takes on f6, as happens in the game, white takes the bishop on c4. So here, queen e2 check, bishop e6, and now f takes g7. And likely what happened here is Abrahamyan messed up her preparation because she takes on g7, rook g8, and goes b5. But the main line theory here is to play b5 first while the pawn is still on f6, covering the e7 square. Black usually plays either knight a5 here, or I think knight b4 might be a move as well with just some crazy complications. But this is the theory: b5, knight a5, f takes g7, and the position is, of course, very, very sharp. However, she likely mixed something up because she takes on g7 first, rook to g8, now b5. But now Carissa goes knight e7, the knight is much better placed here on e7, and black's position all of a sudden, according to the computer at least, is much, much better. As now this knight is strong, black has control over the d5 square, two bishops obviously playing, and eventually black will castle queenside and just have a great position. So game continues, takes, rook takes g7, knight c3, but now bishop to a5, hitting the knight, bishop to d2, and knight to d5, just simple play from black. Here, if white were to take on d5, black could at least trade on d2, go queen takes d5, followed by castles, and just has a fantastic position. Engine is already saying that black is basically winning here, as white's pawns are very weak, and the bishop on e6 is pretty strong, and at some point can activate very quickly. So instead, Abrahamyan goes queen to e5, hitting the rook, but this allows very nice move from black f6, with the point that if white takes on e6 with check, black has rook e7, winning the queen due to the pin on the e-file. So after f6, queen h5 check, but now bishop f7, queen h6, rook g6, another tempo on the queen, but keep in mind that c3 is hanging. So here white takes on h7, but black is able to win a piece on c3. Now things aren't so easy here for black. After winning the piece, white does castle, king on e8 is certainly weak, but Carissa manages to defend, definitely not in the best possible way. I think there was a couple moments here in this game where the engine was giving possibly some better choices for white in order to make black really work to convert this one. But for the most part, black was kind of keeping the extra piece. And yeah, game does continue for a while as we get this endgame here, and white tries to at least somehow either trade off all the pawns or get some counterplay. But Carissa manages here to get her own counterplay going with the c-pawn. So we get b6, trades on b6, takes on d5, and now the c-pawn ends up basically winning the game for black. She brings the knight in, trades off the knights, bishop comes back to e4, and the black is only left with one pawn, but it's enough to win the game because it's a very, very strong passed pawn. The bishop is holding it down, and yeah, there's not much white can do here. And after check, rook to b5, white had to resign as black is getting rook to b1 next. The pawn will eventually promote, and game is over. So with this win, Carissa stays on a perfect score, 6 out of 6, as she fights for the Fisher Prize, which she will get a huge bonus if she manages to win all 11 games in the U.S. Women's Championship. Also winning today was Alice Lee, who's one of several players 2 points behind Carissa Yip, now on 4 out of 6. Today, Alice was playing against the two-time champion Jennifer Yu and manages to win a very, very nice game here, starting with this shot b4 on the queen side. Very nice move. The point here is that if black takes on b4, white will advance with c5, hitting the bishop on d6. There's queen b5 check in the position. If black takes this pawn as well, then the idea is for white to take on f6 with the bishop. If queen f6, there's queen to b5 check, winning a piece. And after gf6, bishop a4 check, followed by rook to d7, white wins material here on the 7th rank. So very, very nice find by Alice. Black is forced to just castle and ignore this one, but now white can advance the pawn forward, and these pawns on the queen side end up being very, very strong for white. So here Jennifer plays a6. Is probably a mistake because this basically just allows white to establish even more passed pawns on the queen side. Black takes, c takes b5, now white has 2 passed pawns. Black's idea here was to try to get some counterplay with the c pawn, but yeah, objectively white's pawns are too strong. That said, Jennifer did have a chance here after e5, bishop b3, knight g4. This wasn't exactly the best that Alice could do, but she goes bishop to b6. At this point, apparently e4 would have given black some very, very serious compensation here. Bishop takes d8, for example, rook takes d8, and now, of course, white's knight is under attack, h2 is under attack. So had Jennifer found this, then this would have given black some huge, huge counterplay. Instead, rook to b8 was played, but now h3, black is forced back, knight to d2, and black no longer was able to get counterplay in this game. Knight to c4, now white takes this pawn. Black manages to take on b6, but after rook a1, rook takes a1. If rook takes b6 here, then there's issues on the back rank after rook a8 check. For example, rook to b8, so I can trade this one, and then go queen c8 check with a nice finish. Queen f8, bishop h7 at the very end, and white wins the queen. So rook takes a1 here. The players end up in this endgame with opposite color bishops. White have an extra pawn, but black is basically lost here because this passed b pawn, or these passed b pawns, are just very, very strong. So queen f6, now b7. Again, you can't take the pawn because of tactics. There's queen c8 check. So g6, but now rook to a6. The rook comes in with a very nasty pin on the 6th rank, and now black basically can't defend the bishop and defend against the promotion as well. So queen e7, queen d5. Jennifer decided to take here, but essentially just giving up a piece, and yeah, it was all over very soon. Nice finish, bishop takes g6. If you take the bishop, there's rook d7 with the pin. Rook c8 was played, rook d7, and black was forced to resign. So very nice win for Alice as she moves to 4 out of 6 and is at least within some distance of Carissa if she manages to slow down. So that takes us into tomorrow's round 7, where we will see Caruana playing black against Sam Sevian, Carissa playing white against the 2-time champion Nazi Paikidze. Should be a really, really interesting day, and hopefully you folks will catch me here for the recap afterwards. Hope you have a good one, and take care.